September 27th, 1972. Beijing. Inside the Great Hall of the People. Two men sit across from each other. Mao Zedong, chairman of the People's Republic of China, now 78 years old, and Kakue Tanaka, Prime Minister of Japan, making his first official visit to China. The meeting has been carefully prepared. Diplomatic relations are about to be normalized after decades of hostility. Tanaka knows what he must do. He begins to speak about the past, about what Japan did to China, about the invasion, the occupation, the suffering. He expresses his deep regret. Mao raises his hand. He stops him. He tells Tanaka there is no need for apologies. He thanks Japan for invading China. The room falls silent. Japanese diplomats exchange glances. Even those who have heard Mao speak this way before are unsettled by the directness of his words. What kind of man thanks the invaders of his own country? To understand that, we need to go back 35 years, to the summer of 1937, to when everything changed. July 7th, 1937. The Marco Polo Bridge, southwest of Beijing. A skirmish between Chinese and Japanese troops. Within weeks, it escalates into full-scale war. Japanese forces pour into northern China. The Second Sino-Japanese War has begun. By August, Japanese armies are advancing on Shanghai. The battle for China's most important city will last 3 months. Chinese forces fight street by street, building by building. The casualties are staggering. The Nationalist army loses over 300,000 men. The Japanese lose 70,000. Shanghai falls in November. The Japanese advance continues. Nanjing, the capital. In December 1937, Japanese troops enter the city. What follows is 6 weeks of systematic massacre. Over 200,000 civilians are killed. The world watches in horror, though few understand the full scale of what is happening. This is not a border conflict. This is an existential threat. Japan intends to conquer China, to break its will to resist, to establish complete control over its territory and resources. China faces annihilation. At this moment, China is not unified. Two forces claim to lead the Chinese people. The first is the nationalist government, the Kuomintang, led by Chiang Kai-shek. They control the major cities, the recognized government, the regular army. They have been fighting regional warlords and communists for a decade, trying to unify China under their rule. The second is the Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong. They control rural base areas in the northwest, mainly in Shanxi province. Their forces number perhaps 30,000 regular troops. They have been fighting the Nationalists in a civil war that has raged since 1927. Just 2 years earlier, they nearly faced complete destruction during the Long March. These two forces hate each other. They have been killing each other for a decade. But now, Japan is invading. The pressure to unite becomes overwhelming. In December 1936, Chiang Kai-shek is kidnapped by his own generals and forced to agree to a truce with the communists. The Second United Front is formed. Nationalists and communists will fight Japan together. On paper, they are now allies. But Mao Zedong is already thinking differently about this war. August 22nd, 1937. The war is 6 weeks old. Mao calls a meeting at Luochuan. a small town in northern Shanxi province. The communist leadership gathers to discuss strategy. How should they fight Japan? Some commanders want to engage the Japanese directly, to prove the communists are genuine patriots, to fight shoulder to shoulder with the nationalists. The survival of China is at stake. Mao disagrees. He speaks clearly about what he believes must be done. The communist forces should avoid direct confrontation with the Japanese army. They should conduct guerrilla warfare behind Japanese lines. But they should not commit to major battles. They should preserve their strength. They should expand their base areas while the nationalists bear the cost of conventional warfare. They should let the Japanese and the nationalists exhaust each other. When the war ends, the communists must be strong enough to take power. Some in the room are shocked. Others understand immediately. This is not about defeating Japan. This is about positioning for what comes after. The strategy is set. While the world sees a united front, Mao sees an opportunity. What follows are 8 years of brutal warfare. Chiang Kai-shek and the Nationalist army fight the kind of war everyone expects them to fight. They engage the Japanese in major battles across China. The Battle of Taiyuan in 1937. The Battle of Suzhou in 1938. The Battle of Wuhan, lasting 4 months, ending in October 1938 with the fall of China's provisional capital. Battle after battle, city after city. The nationalists resist. The human cost is staggering. The nationalist army loses over 3 million soldiers killed in action during the war. Their best divisions, their German-trained troops, their most experienced commanders, ground down in the defense of Chinese cities. When they can no longer hold the cities, they retreat inland. The government moves to Chongqing, deep in Sichuan province. They adopt a strategy of trading space for time, drawing the Japanese deeper into China's interior, extending their supply lines, bleeding them through attrition. The Nationalist Air Force is destroyed in the first year of the war. Their modern weapons are exhausted. They become dependent on foreign aid, first from Germany, then from the Soviet Union, finally from the United States after Pearl Harbor. By 1941, the front lines have stabilized. The Japanese control the major cities and railways. The nationalists control the interior. The war becomes a stalemate, a grinding war of attrition. Millions of Chinese civilians die. Millions more become refugees. The nationalist government struggles to hold China together, but they are fighting. They are engaging the Japanese. They are preventing Japan from conquering all of China. They are keeping Japan's armies tied down, unable to deploy them elsewhere. This is the war the world sees. This is the war that is recorded in the history books. The Communist War looks very different. In September 1937, the Communist Eighth Route Army is officially formed. On paper, it is under nationalist command. In reality, Mao maintains complete control. The force numbers about 45,000 men. One division, under General Lin Biao, ambushes a Japanese supply convoy at Pingxingguan. It is celebrated in communist propaganda as a great triumph. It shows the communists are fighting. Then, the pattern emerges. The communist forces do not defend cities. They do not engage in major battles. When the nationalists order them to reinforce defensive positions, They delay or claim they are not ready. They move into rural areas behind Japanese lines. They establish base areas in the countryside. This is presented as guerrilla warfare, small attacks on isolated outposts, harassment of supply lines, ambushes of small patrols. It looks like resistance, but the scale is carefully controlled. The 8th Route Army avoids any engagement that might seriously damage their forces. Meanwhile, something else is happening. The communist base areas are growing. The Japanese control the cities and the railways. But rural China behind Japanese lines is a vacuum. The communists fill it. They establish local governments. They recruit peasants. They collect taxes. They expand their territory. By 1940, the 8th Route Army has grown to 400,000 men. By 1945, it will number over 1 million. They control base areas with a population of nearly 100 million people. In August 1940, something unexpected happens. Peng Dehuai, the deputy commander of the 8th Route Army, launches a major offensive against Japanese positions in northern China. The 100 Regiments Offensive. For 3 months, communist forces attack Japanese railways, bridges, and supply depots. Over 400,000 communist troops are involved. Japanese casualties exceed 20,000. It is the largest communist military operation of the entire war. It proves the 8th Route Army is capable of major offensive operations. Mao is furious. The offensive has exposed the true strength of communist forces. The Japanese now know the communists are not just a minor guerrilla annoyance. Japanese forces respond with brutal campaigns in communist base areas. The communists suffer severe damage. More importantly, the offensive has revealed the communist strategy. The Nationalists see that the communists have hundreds of thousands of troops that have not been committed to the major battles against Japan. Questions are asked. Why have these forces not been used to reinforce the defense of Chinese cities? Mao criticizes Peng Dehuai severely. This kind of operation must never happen again. After 1940, the communist forces returned to small-scale operations. They never again mount a major offensive against the Japanese. For the next 5 years, they focus on consolidation and expansion of their base areas. January 1941. Tensions between nationalists and communists explode into open conflict. The new 4th Army, a communist force operating in eastern China, refuses nationalist orders to relocate. Nationalist forces attack them. Over 3,000 communist soldiers are killed. The United Front is collapsing. Both sides are preparing for the civil war they know will come after Japan is defeated. By 1943, the cooperation has become purely nominal. The communists maintain their strategy. They avoid fighting the nationalists directly when possible. They avoid fighting the Japanese in any major engagement. They focus entirely on building their base areas, recruiting, training, and preparing for the future. In Yan'an, the communist capital in Shanxi province, a different atmosphere prevails. The base areas are expanding. Recruitment is strong. The party is consolidating its control. Mao is conducting political campaigns within the party. The rectification movement of 1942 to 1944. Establishing ideological discipline. Eliminating dissent. Building his personal authority. Creating the cult of personality that will define his rule. The communists present themselves as defenders of China. Their propaganda emphasizes their resistance to Japan, but their actual military operations remain small-scale. Their focus is internal development and expansion. By 1944, American observers arrive in Yan'an, the Dixie mission. They are impressed by what they see: disciplined troops, efficient administration, enthusiastic support from the local population. It compares favorably to what they have witnessed in nationalist areas. The Americans do not fully understand what they are seeing. They are witnessing a movement that has spent 8 years preparing not to defeat Japan, but to win the civil war that will follow. August 15th, 1945. Japan surrenders. The Second World War is over. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki have forced the Japanese government to capitulate. In China, the news brings jubilation and relief. 8 years of warfare are over. Millions have died, but China has survived. The Japanese occupation will end. But the question immediately arises: what happens now? The Japanese still occupy vast territories across China. Who will accept their surrender? Who will take control of these territories? Both the Nationalists and the Communists race to fill the vacuum. American aircraft transport, Nationalist troops to the major cities to accept Japanese surrender. The Soviet Union, which has just invaded Manchuria in the final days of the war, turns over captured Japanese weapons to communist forces. The Civil War begins almost immediately. On paper, the Nationalists should win easily. They have over 3 million men under arms. They have American equipment. They have international recognition. They control the major cities. But the Nationalist army is exhausted. 8 years of fighting Japan has destroyed their best units. Their soldiers are demoralized. The government has lost the confidence of the Chinese people. The Communists have over 1 million well-trained, disciplined troops. They control base areas with nearly 100 million people. They have spent 8 years building their organization, recruiting, training, and preparing for this moment. Their soldiers believe in their cause. Their administration is efficient. More importantly, the Communists have something the Nationalists have lost: momentum and morale. The Civil War lasts 4 years. The Nationalists win the early battles. They recapture most of the major cities. But they cannot hold them. They are overstretched, trying to garrison too much territory with exhausted troops. The Communists use the same strategy they used against Japan. They avoid decisive battles when they might lose. They attack Nationalist supply lines. They isolate Nationalist garrisons. They win over the rural population through land reform and discipline. By 1947, the tide is turning. The Communists begin winning major battles. The Nationalist army begins to collapse. Entire divisions defect to the Communists or surrender without fighting. By 1949, it is over. The Nationalists retreat to Taiwan. On October 1st, 1949, Mao Zedong stands atop Tiananmen Gate in Beijing and declares the founding of the People's Republic of China. He has won. The Communist Party controls mainland China. Chiang Kai-shek is defeated. The Japanese invasion created the conditions for communist victory. The Nationalists exhausted themselves fighting Japan. The Communists preserved their strength and expanded their base. When the war ended, the Communists were positioned to win. 7 years after victory, Japan begins sending delegations to China. Relations are slowly improving. In 1956, Endo Saburo, a former lieutenant general in the Imperial Japanese Army, visits China. He meets with Mao. He expresses his regret for the war, for the invasion, for what Japan did to China. Mao tells him there is no need for regret. He tells Endo that the Japanese army helped the communists. Without the invasion, the nationalists would not have been weakened. The communists would not have had the opportunity to grow strong. The Japanese visitors are confused. They expected anger, perhaps some performative acceptance of their apology. They did not expect gratitude. But Mao means what he says. Over the next 16 years, Mao says the same thing to every Japanese visitor who tries to apologize. In 1960, he tells a delegation of Japanese writers that Japan did China a great favor. China must thank the Japanese Imperial Army. In 1964, he tells Asian delegates that without the Japanese invasion, the Communist Party would not have won. In 1970, he tells American journalist Edgar Snow that the Chinese Revolution could not have succeeded without Japanese help. Each time, the message is the same. Each time, Mao is sincere. September 27, 1972. We return to where we began. Prime Minister Tanaka has come to Beijing to normalize diplomatic relations between Japan and China. It is a historic moment. After decades of hostility, the two nations are establishing formal relations. Tanaka knows he must address the war. He begins his carefully prepared apology. He speaks of Japan's regret, of the suffering caused, of the desire to move forward with a new relationship. Mao interrupts him. He tells Tanaka that there is no need for apologies. The Japanese militarists rendered China a great service. They helped drive out Chiang Kai-shek. China must thank Japan. Tanaka is stunned. His foreign minister, Masayoshi Ohira, tries to move the conversation forward, but Mao continues. He says that without Japan's invasion of China, the communists would not have been able to develop, would not have gained power. He explicitly states this is the only way to look at it. He even refuses war reparations from Japan. He says this is his only condition for normalizing relations. No apology needed. No reparations required. The meeting continues. Diplomatic relations are established, but everyone in the room understands they have witnessed something extraordinary. The leader of China has thanked Japan for invading his country 16 years, from 1956 to 1972. Every time a Japanese visitor tried to apologize, Mao told them the same thing. Thank you for invading. This was what Mao genuinely believed. The invasion of China killed up to 20 million people, but it also weakened the nationalist government. It created the conditions for communist expansion. It made possible the communist victory. To Mao, those deaths were an acceptable price for political power. This was not a unique moment in his thinking. After taking power in 1949, the same calculation would appear again and again. The anti-rightist campaign of 1957. Over 500,000 branded as enemies. The Great Leap Forward of 1958. History's deadliest famine. Between 15 and 55 million deaths. The Cultural Revolution of 1966. 10 years of chaos. Between 500,000 and 2 million killed. Between 1949 and his death in 1976, policies under Mao's rule resulted in an estimated 60 to 80 million deaths. But it began with understanding what the Japanese invasion meant to him. Not a tragedy to be mourned, an opportunity to be seized. A path to power built on the sacrifice of millions. For that opportunity, he thanked the invaders,